Switching gears to politics, President Trump has been echoing Russian talking points on Ukraine, taking aim at Ukrainian leader Zelensky hours after U.S. and Russian diplomats held war talks. Meanwhile, there's a slew of court hearings surrounding various Trump administration actions today aimed at transforming the government. Joining us now to discuss all things politics, hey, our guy is back, Eric Faddis, political strategist and attorney back here on the Live Zone. Good to see you, Eric. Happy Wednesday.
Always good to be with you, Guy.
Let's jump into the main story of the day, or shall I say this hour. Breaking news, if you will, where we are now getting word that President Trump has now called Ukrainian President Zelensky, quote, a dictator without elections. He added that he better move fast or he is not going to have a country, and that he played Biden like a fiddle. What's going on here, Eric?
Guy, this is a complete about face from the United States' approach to this Ukrainian-Russian conflict historically. And it's so bizarre that Trump is also accusing Ukraine of essentially being responsible for starting the war when, Russia invaded Ukraine. It just shows kind of an alarming allegiance to dictator Putin, in my opinion, and also, casting off our allies as, weak and underhanded and enemies, which I think is problematic diplomatically.
Yeah, really interesting how all of this is unfolded. It's going to continue to be interesting to see what verbiage comes out of the president's mouth in the near future pertaining to Ukraine. Hey, we also know that President Trump now banning AP over the use of the Gulf of Mexico. The AP has clients that, in essence, don't just focus on the U.S., but, well, they focus on around the world who view it as the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this is a stalemate that is now going into its second week. You think there's going to be a break here at all, Eric?
It's difficult to say who might blink first. The press is considered really the fourth branch of government that places a check on the executive branch. And the AP disagrees with Trump in terms of how the Gulf should be referred to. I don't think Trump has any power to say, hey, I only want press folks who are going to agree with me on stuff in the Oval Office. I think there's likely going to be a First Amendment challenge to this action, and the AP might prevail.
All right, we'll take it closer to home, where we know that it seems like there happens to be more egg on the face for the Trump administration after the U.S. Department of Agriculture said it is trying to revoke termination letters it sent to workers supporting the bird flu response. Positions such as animal health technicians and vets were exempt from being terminated. Yet again, how does something like this happen, Eric?
I think part of it is that, Trump and his administration has been fast and furious. Since they've gotten into the Oval Office, they have taken measures very quickly to try to restructure the entire government and how things work. And when you do that so hastily, you're going to make mistakes. There was another mistake they made by terminating officials who are responsible for nuclear operations, and they have to rehire those folks as well. So we're seeing some backpedaling by the Trump administration based on these hasty moves.
Yeah, we also know that the Trump administration has ordered legal service providers working with unaccompanied migrant children to, in essence, stop their work, put the brakes on it. The move is the latest in a string of actions stripping key resources from immigrants in the U.S., this time, Eric, targeting children and teenagers who cross the southern border without their parents. Your take on this?
Surely I understand Trump has his agenda and he has immigration as a priority and he's allowed to pursue that. But we've got to do it in a way that is not inconsistent with humanitarian standards and norms, in a way that doesn't, imperil and possibly put at risk children who've done nothing wrong and don't deserve that kind of thing. And so I think there has to be kind of a more measured approach, especially when addressing separating families and how children are going to fare once these immigration measures continue to be put in place.
And as I stated earlier, not only are you a political strategist, but you happen to be an attorney as well, which is why I'm very curious to get your take on this. Moving into the legal realm, where earlier today, the Trump administration told the Supreme Court that a court order pausing his ability to really fire a government watchdog risks irreversible damage to the presidency. What's the latest on this, Eric?
Yeah, so Trump wants to fire these watchdogs, and he's essentially arguing that, hey, if you don't let me do this, there's gonna be some big calamity, and he hasn't, in my opinion, really articulated what that would be. But there is a procedure legally for terminating such watchdogs. Usually, it requires notice to Congress of 30 days, and also giving reasons for firing them. The government cannot act in an arbitrary or capricious manner, and when it does, the court could shut them down.
Staying in the courts, we also know that a federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration's ability to fire or put on leave without pay intelligence officials working on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility projects. In layman's terms, Eric, for guys like me, what does this mean?
So essentially, Trump has this campaign against DEI measures. He's super against them. So he's trying to really expel any reference to them within the government and terminate any employees who are working on them. The problem is that when the federal government terminates its own employees, there are procedural due process concerns that can arise. Usually the employees have to have, are entitled to have a hearing or at least some good cause as to why they were terminated. It's not like an at-will employment. And so they're going to be pushing back against Trump, saying, hey, we did not get our due process in these firings.
We also know that President Trump issued an executive order yesterday with the goal of expanding access to and lowering the cost of infertility treatment known as IFV. The order directs Trump's assistants for domestic policy to come up with a list of policy ideas for protecting IFV access. Your thoughts on this?
I'm not usually on the side of Trump, but I think this is the right move. He campaigned on this. I think politically it helps him, or he thinks it's going to help him with some female voters whom he may have lost with some of the more hardline rhetoric regarding abortion and that kind of thing. But I think this is certainly the right move. It will hopefully expand access to this really important measure that a lot of people depend upon to have children.
All right, Eric, we'll end with this, and that is a quarter of U.S. shoppers have dumped favorite stores over political policies and or their stances. The new poll found that 4 in 10 Americans have shifted spending to align with moral views in recent months. Bottom line, Eric, it looks like folks are really going to shop where the owners, let's say, support the left and or the right. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this is kind of, in a way, it's new because more people have information about the policies of these particular corporations, and they can align themselves with, hey, I want to shop here because they support my values, or I don't. But I would note that even historically, organizations like the NAACP and other organizations have put out such lists of places at which you should shop if you support that organization's values. So it's new, but it's also something we've seen before.
Eric Vanis, political strategist and attorney, joining us yet again on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Always good to see you, Eric.
My pleasure, Guy.